I know I'm a bit late to this topic. Sue me. Actually, don't do that, but whatever. If telemetry comes up on Linux, you know I'm gonna be there eventually. But today, we're not talking about something like Fedora's telemetry system, which rightfully got absolutely torn apart so it could then come back as a new form, and honestly, was in a much better state then, and was nowhere near as egregious. Instead, we're talking about Manjaro, which to my surprise, I hadn't really heard anything about recently. I guess they were just kind of doing the Manjaro thing, or maybe not the Manjaro thing, which is why I hadn't heard about them. Regardless, just the other day, this was announced. Testers needed Manjaro Data Donor. Now that's certainly a nice sounding name, but let's just be honest, it means telemetry. However, as I've stated in the past, I am not inherently against telemetry. I'm just against certain actions that people tend to take when they have telemetry. So let's talk about what Manjaro is doing. It is a way for us to gather a few usage stats about Manjaro. The motivation for that at the start was to improve our user counting. Until now, what has been done was counting systems via ping.manjaro.org. These pings are sent from Manjaro systems via the network manager. So they already had a very basic, very rudimentary telemetry system. It was just counting the number of users based on systems throwing up pings. There were some problems with this approach though. Individual systems were only distinguished on basis of IP address. This doesn't allow stats over time, and systems behind the same NAT are counted as one. So if you have 5 different systems on your home network, that's basically going to be one system. Also, one needs to store the IP address at least for a short period of time. The analysis software that was used was Matomo, and they promise IP addresses are masked, but we still had to rely on this promise. I don't really understand why they were using this, because there are open source systems that are out there that you can verify yourself. I'm sure there's a reason for this, but I don't get it. Matomo is a rather bulky tool and wasn't really made for system telemetry. It is meant for website analysis. The setup therefore was kind of hacky, while the results rather meager, and the data was only available to few people. Using network manager pings to check the online status for user counting is acceptable, but also not what it was meant for, nor was it communicated as such. I think it's better to be explicit and transparent about these kind of things. Now, say what you will about telemetry being good, telemetry being bad, opt-in or opt-out. This, I think, is very important. Making sure that people are aware of what is happening. Making sure that users know that this is something that you are trying to do. Now, that was the old solution. Let's talk about the new one. So basically what it is a very lightweight Python script. I will be showing you the script in just a moment, and we will be testing it. And the data is just being sent to a small database on a virtual private server. It's probably going to be bigger once this is actually deployed and available to everyone on Manjaro, but for the sake of testing, that's perfectly fine. And as for the data they've currently collected, this is available on Manjaro metrics. Now, this isn't all of the data, and we'll get to that in just a moment. This is just the nice data that's, kind of neat to see. I do think some of the graphs here aren't really great. Like, this is not a great graph to be showing refresh rate. Same with CPU multi-threading. I would probably use a pie chart for both of these, especially this one. Like, a pie chart just makes more sense for this. There are not that many things that you need, like, points on a line graph for. In the next few days, we'll do some more testing, and if the results are positive, I plan on installing it on all Manjaro systems and adding a systemd service to submit the data automatically. With this systemd service later in place, sending the hardware data with MDD will be opt-out, because I believe if you do opt-in, the data you gather will be so heavily skewed, you can just leave it be. Let me know what you think. I know telemetry is a contentious subject, as you can tell from the 200 comments here, but we need at least some data about how Manjaro is being used by so many people around the world in order to show that the project has a future and also to plan for that future. Yes, 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 we're doing this again. Another opt-out telemetry system. Why is it that people never learn? How many times do we need to make a video about opt-out telemetry before people stop doing it in the FOSS world? I really don't know. I genuinely don't know how many times I need to make this exact same video. But we'll be fair and we'll talk about what this is actually doing and what data is actually being collected. So here we have the script, Manjaro Data Donor. Now, important thing to point out, we only collect impersonal information about hardware and the environment. In particular, we don't store IP addresses. Now, please never forget, if you connect to a server over the internet, you are sending them your IP address. Unless you're going through a VPN or doing some various other things, but except for those cases, they know your IP address. If you don't trust Manjaro isn't storing your IP address, stop using the distro. If you cannot trust your distro, why are you using it? Now, we'll run the script in a moment, but looking through the code, I'm not seeing anything that looks weird, right? There's nothing spooky in here. There's no weirdly obfuscated code blocks. There's no weird approaches to doing things. Everything in here is pretty straightforward. It's only a couple hundred lines of code. If you want to go and read through it yourself, it's like, what, 800? It's pretty easy to understand. I don't see anything that stands out to me, at least from there. So it's just going to be a matter of how you feel about the actual data being sent. Now, just being a Python script and Manjaro not being anything that special, you can run the script on any other distro. The specific Manjaro things like the Manjaro stream you're in and things like that obviously won't be filled out, but most of the rest of this works exactly the same. Once you've it installed, if you want to do a dry run, so collect the data but not send it up to the server, what you can do is mdd.py --dry-run and it'll collect it locally. I'll cut back in just a moment. Oh, there we go. Okay. There are two very important questions I have here. The first one is, please explain what the data is actually for. I don't want to hear the generic answer of, oh, it'll help the developers. I want a clear and concise plan for how this data is actually going to be used, because none of the data we have here is inherently terrible to give away, right? You're not giving away, I don't know, like your home address or something like that, right? But there's some information in here which I don't think has any value whatsoever, right? There's some things in here that make a lot of sense. Like, are you using Pipewire? What storage do you have? Are you using disk encryption? What file system do you use? Are you dual booting? When was your last package update? How many packages do you actually have installed? What shell are you using? What desktop are you using? If you have a display manager, what display manager? Are you on Wayland? And a bunch of other information which totally fair to collect. Whether you like the data or not, I at least understand what value that data actually has. There's other things in here which just don't have any value whatsoever, right? Why do you need to know, for example, what the vendor of my GPU is? Obviously, the GPU driver makes sense. You know I have an AMD GPU, but why do you need to know it's an Asus GPU? Why do you need to know the model of my monitor or what port it's mapped to? Or what's another one in here? What my time zone is? Like, what are you doing with this information? I don't think they're doing anything malicious, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't think that. I just don't understand why this data is being included in the other data being collected, because especially, like, what ports my monitors are mapped to, there is no productive value in collecting this data. Now, it's totally fair to want to know how many monitors your users have, or the resolution of those monitors, or the refresh rate, or the DPI, or whether they're vertical or horizontal, but I don't see any possible value you could have in knowing the model or the port they are mapped to. Like, what change could you make on the Manjaro side? What feature could you add? What bug could you fix that you couldn't fix without knowing this information? And if you can't answer that question, you shouldn't be collecting that data. Again, I don't think they're being malicious here. I just don't think they've thought about why they want this data, and it's just, oh, the data is there, so I might as well grab it alongside the stuff that actually might be useful. Now, contrast this with the Fedora telemetry proposal, which I did seriously disagree with, but what I will acknowledge is a lot is being explained here, like what sort of data we might collect, how we're going to handle that data. If there are issues with the data, how we're going to go ahead and remove those. Things like the GDPR and safely handling user data to make sure we don't get sued by the European government. You know, very important things to deal with when you're dealing with user data. This is a research paper on how to correctly handle user data in the context of telemetry. And whilst I still think the way they approached it was wrong, they tried to preempt a lot of the discussions that were going to arise. Now, the second concern I have, you know it, I know it, everybody knows it. We already mentioned it briefly. Opt-out telemetry. Now, I'm going to say this once, and I know some developers don't like to hear this. Opt-out telemetry is anti-user, okay? I know you want to argue it's good for the developers, but it is objectively anti-user. Now, opt-out telemetry without first asking the user for consent is actively user hostile. You need to ask the user to collect their data before you collect it. If you don't do so, you are effectively spyware. However, I'm willing to hear out why you think telemetry is a good idea. The problem is the following. For every daily active user in our forums, we have, according to our current counting methodology, over 1,000 users of our distribution who don't interact with us in any way. And that's their good right. Absolutely fair. Now, asking these users to opt in could be done through some technical means, but as I tried to just describe this population, imagine somebody different than us, somebody who doesn't know much about software, maybe even not know that he or she uses Manjaro. Now, suddenly out of nowhere, a random pop-up is grabbing the attention, asking for something the user might not understand, but definitely something he did not ask for right now. How should he react? Does he really want to read a long explanation why he should click yes here? If he only ever used Manjaro to get his computing needs done without much other involvement? Yes. Yes, absolutely. You're not going to come up with an argument for why consent is bad. Like, it's not going to happen. The only possible way you can do so is outlining exactly why you need this data and exactly what value this data has that a user is going to get in exchange. If they offer this user data, you're going to be able to do X. You're going to be able to fix this bug, or know to ship these packages, or do this thing or that thing. If you don't make that explanation, you should not expect that users willingly give you their data. You do not have any right over their user data. I think such a pop-up is user hostile, at least for the users who are not involved with Linux more than they need to. And these are, according to the numbers we have until now, the absolute majority. This is basically the exact same argument that Mozilla was making in their PPA trial. There is a toggle to turn it off because some people object to advertising irrespective of the privacy properties, and we support people configuring their browser however they choose. That said, we consider modal consent dialogues to be a user-hostile distraction from better defaults, and do not believe such an experience would have been an improvement here. Just like in this case, in the Manjaro case, pop-ups and asking the users if they want to offer their data is not user hostile. Or put it another way, of our many thousand current users, my assumption is less than 1% mind if this impersonal data is being shared with us and put into some nice diagrams. I would completely disagree this is impersonal data. With the amount of data being collected, this is enough to very, very easily fingerprint individual machines. Yes, each data point isn't personal information. Put together, though, it is very personal. Why should over 99% of the users have to interact with some pop-up and consider an action instead of the less than 1% who are actually interested in it and then act accordingly? Yes, maybe less than 1% actually know they should care to care about their data, but that is not a reason to collect 99% of users' data because they don't understand how important their user data is. In the context of Windows, for example, which is considerably more egregious than what Manjaro is doing here, you will hear normal people say, oh, I don't care if Microsoft is collecting my data, I don't do anything illegal, I have nothing to hide. That's the argument that is being made here, right? Most people don't understand how important their data is. Most people have no idea that data is valuable and data should be protected. The other option is to put this opt-in button somewhere in the settings and ask through our social media channels or other means to activate it. The result will be that we again only can statistically cover the people who are already engaged with us. You can say this, but this is the way that it's already done on KDE. Most people don't activate it because most people don't care to get involved in telemetry. But if we go into, I think we can just search, telemetry, under user feedback, right here. Most distros disable this by default. Plasma manages the function completely fine with most people not offering telemetry. If you want to do so though, you're absolutely free to do so. This is the way that telemetry needs to be handled. I do not like this idea that, oh, we developed the software, we need the data. Like, no, that's not the contract we have here. But again, if you want the data, you need to accurately explain what you can do with the data that you can't do without it. There are so many developers who try to add telemetry into their software and never even consider what the data can actually do. And then you're just sitting on a bunch of data that, why did you collect it? I don't know, because telemetry helps developers. When I think of me as a user of other software, what I want from this software is not getting annoying pop-ups, asking me to do stuff or decide things. I want to get my stuff done. But what I also don't want is for the software to spy on me, collect personal information, and cross-share this with other companies. We do nothing at all like this here, not in the slightest. And that's why I'm also on a personal level fine with making this opt-out. And that's fine if that is your stance on data collection. However, there is no reason why you cannot add this into the installer, and when users install their system, then it prompts them, or after the update where this is added, it prompts them once and then never again. Until the use case for this data can be accurately explained with a clear and concise plan for what it is going to improve upon, this needs to be put to the side. Now, I am not a lawyer, and nobody in this thread is a lawyer, but there are potential legal issues that do need to be sort of at least discussed with a legal team, because the European Union has these data protection laws and how data needs to be handled, and Manjaro, the company, operates in the European Union. So whilst it's important for everyone, it's especially important for people in the European Union to make sure they get this right. This needs to go through a legal team before anything further is done. And whilst it should have been done beforehand, thankfully, due to the response here, that is what is going to happen. We will evaluate the response, set it in context to our overall user base, and how useful the statistics would be to us, as well as look at the legal landscape one more time. I have a feeling the one more time is going to be the first time, considering that I don't think they addressed any of the concerns in the thread. And if it's not the first time, I recommend actually talking to a lawyer rather than the developers about the legal issues. Because again, I'm not a lawyer, and nobody in this thread is a lawyer, but I don't know. Potentially there are issues here? We'll see. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about telemetry in general? And what do you think about the specific approach that Manjaro is taking here? I would like to know. So if you like the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Liberapay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and at least they've kept their certs updated this time.
Like this.